Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of not Better Call Saul. Wow, I knew I was gonna mess this up. Don't tell Jake or Colin. Okay, I'm sorry. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Age of Geek podcast, where we're going to talk about Better Call Saul. Yay! It's funny. Anyways, so yes, I'm Marlee. I'm part of Age of Geek podcast, and I also am part of the Cutscenes and Cupcakes podcast where we talk about video games. So yeah, I wanted to bring some friends on, some guests on to talk about a series that I have recently finished and just love and really excited to talk to you guys about. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. We'll start with Blake.
Blake?
Yeah.
Hi. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Blake Casselman. I'm a writer and producer. I have a new film, a horror film coming out called Limbo that's due out this fall. And I also am the programming director for FanX, Salt Lake Comic Convention.
Yay.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm Tracy Mangum. I'm part of the Age of Geek family, but I'm mostly found over on Movies That Make Us. And so it's fun to branch off and talk a little bit of TV that's important to me. So this is great.
Yay, awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you guys. And Blake, happy to have you again. We had you 2 episodes ago on our Daredevil episode. That one was a lot of fun. Oh, thanks.
That was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the chance to come back and amend for my poor performance last episode. Thanks for having me back so quick.
Well, of course. Of course. Yes. So I honestly, when I was first thinking about this episode, this Age of Geek episode, and wanting to talk about Better Call Saul, I honestly was debating whether I wanted to talk just like about the whole series or kind of more focus on the finale. And I went back and forth because I honestly like couldn't pick. But at the same time where the finale just happened and you know, I felt like it was such a solid finale that I feel like, you know, we could kind of focus more on that. But of course, if there's anything from earlier seasons or whatever, you know, feel free to bring that stuff up. Like I'm not going to be like strict about this at all, you guys. So I just want to talk about the show, like as simple as that.
I think we could talk about the finale and maybe the few episodes before that. Because they and that can take us into the entire series and even into some of Breaking Bad because they did such a great job of wrapping so much of this history of not only the series that it preceded but the series itself, and they tied up so many loose ends and kind of added to so much. There's a lot to unpack with those last few episodes.
Yeah, it's so true. I don't even know what I was going to say. I'm just like, so like, there's just so much. There's so much that happened. Even just, okay, go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to ask Blake. So as a writer, because you've written a lot and you've done screenplays and you've done comic books and you've done I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for them to do a prequel where we know what's going to happen to a lot of the characters, not all of them, but a fair amount, and yet still keep that same kind of tension and apprehension and longing to know what's going to happen. That seems like a really difficult trick to me, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I agree. Prequels are hard to pull off. You know, for example, as much as I enjoyed it, the recent Obi-Wan series on
I knew you were going to bring that up.
There was a lot of cool things that they revealed, and the story was engaging on certain levels, but that the level of suspense it wasn't there with me. because we knew that Princess Leia was going to grow up. We knew that Obi-Wan was going to survive long enough to start training Luke. We knew that Darth Vader was going to survive, and I had to kind of focus on different things to enjoy the series more. And I think that's a problem a lot of prequels run into, is that if you have characters that are being portrayed that are part of the story or part of the series or part of the movies that these are prequels to, whenever they're in dangerous situations, there's no fear for those characters, because everything's going to be okay, and they're going to survive to the next set of stories. I think the writers and producers of this series did two specific things that helped this series work for me and for many other people. Is number one, they focused on the journey of Jimmy McGill becoming Saul Goodman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And number two, they brought in new characters that we cared about or that engaged us, who weren't part of Breaking Bad. And so that left the question, what happened to these people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kim Wexler, I think, is the biggest one.
Number one. But also Howard, also Lalo. I mean, and we were reminded, I watched a video on the episode where they brought Walt and Jesse back and kind of extended that scene where they took Saul out to the desert, threatened him. But in that scene that was from the actual Breaking Bad episode, he mentions Lalo.
Right.
And this the writers for this series, one strength they have, and maybe this is Vince Gilligan's leadership, but the devil is in the details with these people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Like even from the beginning of season 1 of Better Call Saul, you start to pick up on lots of little things, like even hearing the word or the name Salamanca. You know that from Breaking Bad, and you're just like, wait a second, there's more? And so, and then also, I mean, even just one character that you do know from Breaking Bad, is it the one in the wheelchair? Is that Hector?
Yeah.
Hector, yeah. Like, you see him not in a wheelchair, and you're like, wait a second, this is that same character. So even just kind of like seeing like those little like Easter eggs, like, because you're right, it really was in the details. And I loved how there were just so many different ones throughout the seasons where they just kind of just like threw it in there. And a lot of them were obvious, and some were just kind of subtle. And so like fans of Breaking Bad are going to pick up on those. And I think I love it. Like, I mean, it's fan service for one thing, and also just because they know that they need to pay attention to the details.
Yeah,
and they also expanded the Breaking Bad universe. We learned how Hector ended up in a wheelchair and unable to speak. We learned how Mike Ehrmantraut started working for Saul. We learned, and then in turn started working for Gus Fring. There's a lot of things we learned that expanded that, and other prequels or other things that are supposed to represent before a series or series of movies. Oftentimes the writers will make mistakes, and they'll contradict things that happen later on, or they'll retcon some things that out of the convenience of, hey, we'd like to put this in this character's origin that was not mentioned before. And I really felt like the Better Call Saul did not do any of that. They did not do any retconning, and what they did was they expanded the storylines and kind of gave us origin stories for a lot of these characters to put them in the place where they are introduced in Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah. Well, and even like you go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to say, it never felt like fan service. And sometimes in prequels, it's like they put in an Easter egg that makes you go like, Oh, okay. But there were so many subtle callbacks, and it's like you said, like the devil's in the details. I didn't even remember this, but I saw on the Better Call Saul Facebook page, they had a picture, I think from season 3, which is the last time that Chuck is in court, and they have the exit sign. And then they have the picture of Jimmy in the very last episode, and there's the exit sign. And both of them, it was right before Chuck ended up killing himself. And then this is Jimmy giving everything up to go to jail. It's just little things like that that it never felt like it was like, this is only for the fans. It was just like,
right.
You know,
and it was
natural.
Jimmy, that scene where they showed the exit sign. Jimmy was killing Saul at that point.
Oh, in the very final scene, is that
in the final court scene?
Yeah,
killed Saul
yes,
off.
That's true.
Yes,
and he became Jimmy again,
yeah,
and
right.
that's the Jimmy who kind of fessed up and threw away the deal for 7 years.
Yeah, well, and he,
that Saul had created or worked out with the DA, and he let go of Saul and became Jimmy, and got 86 years for it.
Well, and it's important to point out too that, a big reason why he did that was because he wanted to show Kim Wexler that redemption that he wanted to accomplish in that moment. And it obviously, like, he orchestrated getting her there in the courtroom so that she would witness.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but it almost seemed like too, do you think he pre-planned that, like, from that moment, like even before that? Do you think he was like, you know what, I'm gonna confess to some more stuff and totally throw in the towel of Saul Goodman? Or do you think he kind of decided that in the courtroom that day?
He planned it when he learned that, because he tried to use the whole, I know what happened to Howard.
That's right.
I'm going to use this as a leverage to get the ice cream I want during my 7 years in prison. And they said, you don't? Nope. Kim already came forward and fully, confessed to what happened with Howard. And I think once he realized that Kim was open to a civil lawsuit from Howard's widow.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I think that's when he decided to confess and destroy the deal he had made, because I think he wanted to save Kim from having to go through that.
And I think too, not only that, but he saw how Kim was able to kind of redeem herself in a way. She was able to, like, because he tells her on that phone call, he's like, well, you should just go turn yourself in if you're so great. And she did. And I think to him, he was like, okay, I need to step up to the plate as well. So I think it was partially to keep Kim out from the potential lawsuit and protect her. But I think it was also the way he played it and made it sound like he had something that might implicate Kim, that led her to being in the courtroom. And I don't know if she would have been otherwise. And he wanted to show her that redemption. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that was really, like, great to have her back, her to witness that, and even like that final scene where she goes to visit him in the prison, and just kind of them showing, like, you know what, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but just watching them, like, lean up against the wall and, like, share a cigarette one last time. And I even read an article online that they were talking about the finger guns that they do to each other. And there was actually Jimmy does this finger guns to her as she's leaving. And I think originally they were going to have Kim do it back, or there's a previous season where she did it back to him. And so someone in the article, or the writer of the article, was saying, like, it wouldn't have been appropriate to have her do the finger guns back, because because then that would suggest that, like, she would like, I guess,
Do it
like, be
again.
back in it. Like she,
Yeah.
like, 'cause by her not doing it, it kind of just puts an end to it. Like, this is her finale, like, she's walking away from it. And so to me, that kind of sounds like, I don't know. I wonder if she'll ever, like, if she would ever go back and visit him, or if she truly is done and she's going to move on with her life, you know? It just kind of makes you wonder, will she be back to visit him in jail?
Yeah. I read an interview with Reese Seahorn, and she said she's a hopeless romantic. So she said, I think that Kim will come back and visit him. Yeah. She's like, I think Kim would come back and visit him. She said, they're not going to be what they were, and Jimmy's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. But she said she thinks that Kim would try and find ways legally to make things easier for Saul, or to possibly reduce a sentence, so that they could still have that love and affection for each other and that respect for each other, but not be a couple anymore.
Right. Yeah. I know their relationship throughout the whole thing was pretty interesting, because it kind of felt like a lot of the time, especially early on, it was kind of like a will they won't they situation, and you really don't get like a ton of romance or PDA, if you know, if whatever you want to call it. Like, there just really wasn't a lot of that between them, and so it just kind of makes you wonder, like even when they were married in the you know, in the end there, but that was also mostly just to kind of help protect each other legally. But it's, again, like, I mean, yeah, sure, we saw some like kissing and cuddling and stuff, but like, it was just an odd relationship, I think, overall. But it worked. Like, they were so close. They were partners. Like, they still were like in it together, even though they had like opposing. It seemed like a lot of the times they had kind of opposing views about the law and the ethics and everything. But I don't know. Just overall, they were an odd couple.
Yeah, the strength of their relationship was the scams they pulled on others.
Yeah.
That's what made the relationship weird, but it also made it work for them, because outside of that, they really didn't. There wasn't a lot of. It didn't seem to be a lot of passion outside of you bring out something in me that's exciting. Speaking of Kim to Jimmy, and this is the basis of why I want to be with you.
Yeah.
And that's why when Howard was killed, Kim left, because she realized, you know, I don't like who we are together. She realized the basis of their relationship was scamming people, causing harm to others for their own amusement more than anything else.
Yeah. So, and she's got the heartbreaking line there in that scene, Blake, where Jimmy says, but I love you. And she says, I love you too, but so what? Like, this is bigger. This is more important. And it just breaks your heart, but it's true. And that's what I loved about the writing. Yeah.
Yeah. A romance that works, the two people that are together, if it works, you as a partnership make each other better.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So
that was not the case with those two at all.
Oh, no. So then let me ask you guys this. So, because to me, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth with these scenes. You know, we got to see like some flash forwards of him in Omaha, and you could usually tell when that was happening because it was in black and white. And, you know, but then there was like other just kind of flashbacks here and there. But it seemed like, because here we saw Saul Goodman in this little apartment that him and Kim shared together. But then you also see this like luxury like mansion with like closets and like giant bathtubs and like silk scarves, like all these just like things. And it just kind of makes you wonder, like, what was his, do you think Kim leaving him was his breaking point?
Well, there were three characters that Bob Odenkirk played in this series.
That is true.
He played Jimmy McGill. Jimmy McGill was the person with the conscience. Jimmy McGill was the person that took care of his brother. Jimmy McGill was the person that lived with Kim in the apartment. To do the right thing. Yeah. At first tried to do the right thing. Then there was Saul Goodman. Saul Goodman owned the mansion. with the
Mm-hmm.
with the huge collection of clothes.
Yeah.
And the golden
Gaudy.
toilet.
Oh yeah. Very gaudy. Oh yeah, for sure.
and Saul Goodman, spent his times with prostitutes and working with criminals and making as much money as possible. I think after Kim left, he became full Saul Goodman.
Yes.
And that's when he lived in the mansion that we see the federal agents going through. In the later episodes of Better Call Saul. That was during the Breaking Bad period. And then
Right.
and then we have
well, he completely changed his office too. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh, sorry, my internet was like, I didn't mean to cut in on you, but like
no,
that's peacefully done, and then he went with the pillars.
Yeah.
Right.
And that flashback where Kim comes into his Saul Goodman office to sign the divorce papers.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2 years before Breaking Bad, if I'm getting the timeline right. This is 2 years before Breaking Bad, but
I think so.
2 or 3 years after Kim left. And she's seen him in full Saul Goodman mode.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
So the papers are signed and she walks out and she has that conversation with Jesse.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people were like, well, that was kind of fan service. And I don't think it was. It was connecting Kim to Breaking Bad in a pretty cool way, I thought. But the whole purpose for that conversation with Jesse wasn't as much about the fact she was talking to Jesse. It was about the question at the end of the conversation where Jesse goes, is this guy a good lawyer?
Oh, yes. That's right.
And she says, he was when I knew him.
Oh.
Meaning, I don't know who that guy is in there.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. And that's a little like stab right to the heart, because, again, like we saw everything that happened before and that led up to those moments. And so that was a powerful statement. And then it was pouring rain. And so she runs to her car, but because she just kind of like cut off the conversation and just left.
Yeah.
And also that conversation too helped establish the timeline. Because you kind of wonder, you're like, wait, did she come back to the Saul Goodman office when all of the Walter White stuff was going down? Nope. And then we learned that, I can't remember his friend's name all of a sudden. The other drug, the guy he used to cook meth with. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But you guys know who I'm talking about. Right. Yes, from like the first couple episodes of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, but if Kim doesn't talk to Jesse and kind of give he was a good lawyer when I knew him, Jesse would not have hired Saul, and then this whole thing never would have happened. Yeah. So that's really, and I'm with you, Blake. This was a couple of years before Breaking Bad, and this was just his friend got picked up for cooking and wanted to help get him out.
Yes.
And then the third person that Bob Odenkirk plays is Gene Turkovic, who is his identity while he's living in Omaha during the black and white flash forward stuff.
He's a Cinnabon employee.
He's a manager at Cinnabon. Yeah. And this guy and the life that Saul / Jimmy had to lead as this guy, that was the prison.
Yeah.
Because he was in this, he was hiding in plain sight, but at the same time, he was living this existence which was such a contrast to when he was Jimmy and especially when he was Saul. He was alone. He was living in constant fear of being made. He was living this kind of dead-end existence. I mean, those of us who have worked retail can relate. But at the same time, this is the prison he lived in, and this is the situation that brought Saul back out.
That's true.
At the very end, Saul came back because he couldn't handle this kind of mundane, lonely, boring existence that Gene led.
Oh yeah, so he had to put together a scam. You know, he had to go back to being the con man.
Yep. And that the interesting thing about the cab driver.
Oh.
Right.
What's his name?
I'm so bad with names sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Jeff.
Yeah. The interesting thing about him making Gene in the mall there, when Gene's just sitting on the bench eating his lunch, and he goes up, "Hey, say it. I loved your commercials when I lived in Albuquerque." You think Gene's going to run at that point, but no, Gene was like, "I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to resume my old life. I'm going to bring back the thrill.
I'm tired of living this way."
Yeah.
The wheels definitely started turning in that moment.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those cameos in the finale, namely Jesse Pinkman and Walter White coming back. So I have to say, I kind of wish this wasn't leaked or teased. I wish it would have just been. Did you really not? Oh, because I remember when they were talking about the final episodes coming out that they were going to show up in there, and I was like, like they announced it, like it was an official announcement. I'm like, wait,
I'm glad I missed it.
Why did they do that? It should have just been a freaking surprise. That's what it should have been.
That was directly from Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I know that I read that well, while they were filming it, they did it in complete secrecy, and they kind of did this kind of cloak and dagger stuff where Bryan Cranston and
Aaron
Paul were not seen by anyone outside of the people working on the series.
Oh. Yeah, so I wish they wouldn't have teased that. Like, I wish it would have just been a straight up surprise. But at the same time, like, it was still a lot of fun to see them and to see how they were going to be incorporated in those last few episodes. And I have to say, though, it was a little weird because Aaron Paul is so much older now than when he filmed Breaking Bad series. And so, like, his voice, I couldn't take it seriously. Like, I just kept, like honing in on that. And I'm just like, this doesn't seem right at all. And, like, you know why? Because he's older. But you're just like, okay. And then you're like, hey, I got to focus on the scene.
It was kind of the same way with El Camino, too.
Oh, yes.
You know, because that was filmed. That came out in 2019. And you just had to kind of suspend your disbelief to go with it. I mean, you could tell they tried to de-age Jesse, but you can't fix his voice.
No.
But he was. I think it worked though because he was back in character. Both he and Bryan Cranston were back in character.
They did amazing.
Yeah. I read an interview with Peter Gould, one of the executive producers, and he said in the scene where we first see Jesse and Walter when they're on the RV, he said he had to remind Bryan Cranston, this is basically season 1 of Breaking Bad, season 2. So I need less Heisenberg and I need more Walter. And he was like, oh, okay. And then then he said at the end when they're in the vacuum cleaner guy and they're getting ready to change the locations, he's like, okay, now it's full Heisenberg, so go nuts. You know?
That's true. He was definitely more grumpy in those scenes. He's a little more snappy and a little more condescending to Saul.
I was going to say the arrogance is there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The Heisenberg arrogance.
Oh, yeah. Like when all Jimmy was... Yeah, all he wanted to ask him was just like a hypothetical, like, if you had a time machine, you know, where would you go and whatever. And Walter White just had to totally, like, diminish all of that. He was just like, hey, come
down.
on, dude. Oh, goodness.
But I love the line when he looks at Saul and he says, so you were always like this. And I think that sets up a lot going into the rest of the final episode when he has that redemption arc. He wasn't always like this, and it was always a part of him, and it was always there, but it wasn't the only thing that was there. Whereas with Walter, it was always there and then consumed.
Oh no, we lost Tracy. He was in the middle of saying something really profound.
It was.
Oh man. Well, I was gonna say too with the we'll wait for him to come back. Oh, there he is. You're back.
Sorry about that.
You're okay. Keep going.
It's like trying to watch a video on YouTube and suddenly the commercial pops up.
Mid-roll. But I was just saying, I love that Walter says to him, you were always like this. Mm-hmm. And he's dismissive of Saul at that point. And we learn that Walter White always had that terrible stuff inside of him and allowed it to consume him. Saul had a lot of the same characteristics and it consumed him for a while, but he pulled himself back at the end, which I thought was a very nice difference between the two.
I thought it was also interesting that, you have the different conversations about the time machine with Saul.
Oh yeah.
And he keeps talking about money. Oh, I go back to this date and invest $1 million in Warren Buffett's company. And everyone else would talk about, I'd go back to this time that, that had a profound change in my life or had a profound change in a relationship I had. Their regret was more emotional and more relationship based. And Jimmy kept going back to money. But when he has that conversation with Walt, Walt talks about, he talks about gray matter. He talks about the potential billions of dollars he lost out on because he felt like his former partners cheated him, cheated him out of what was rightfully his. And so Walt's regret was all about the money too.
Mm-hmm. And it's,
and
because he regretted the money with gray matter. Am I there?
Yes, you're there. Maybe. Oh no. We might have lost him again.
We got the spinning wheel of death.
Well, with the time machine thing, like you could tell that like even though Saul kept mentioning like money and stuff, like we as the viewers, we could still tell that like he didn't really mean that. Like you could tell that he also wanted to give a little bit more like emotional response, but he never did. And so it just kind of makes you wonder like why.
There he is.
Sorry. Oh, worst internet ever. Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where were we?
You were talking about Walt and gray matter and regret.
Yes.
Oh, that becomes Walter's excuse as to why he became Heisenberg. I got screwed. Something happened to me, and that caused me to become this person, as opposed to, no, that was really how you were all along. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah, his bruised ego, it was always there, but it was just a little bruised from that gray matter incident and everything. So yeah, when he saw the opportunity, he's like, yes, I'm gonna do something bad because I can. Because I've got nothing to lose, that kind of thing. But yeah, It just kind of makes you wonder why.
I deserve this.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder why did Saul keep answering, like giving his answer about like money? Like, oh, I just want money. Like, why? You could tell that he wanted to answer differently. It seemed like, so it's just like, why was he asking? I mean, obviously, like, you wouldn't bring up that hypothetical question, especially like asking about like, regrets and going back in time and changing things, if he didn't feel that same way about something. Like, why else would he not, like, why else would he bring that up if he didn't want to then think about what he would do?
Well, financial regrets aren't as painful.
Right.
I mean, Walt could throw his former partners under the bus. Saul could come up with many different reasons why, he didn't make the money he wanted to make. But, I would think that if you got inside Jimmy's head or Saul's head, if there's a time where he'd want to go back, potentially, it's when he started harassing and scamming Howard. I believe this was in season 5, correct? When
I believe so. Yeah.
With the hooker showing up to his lunch date and him throwing the bowling balls over the wall and damaging Howard's car,
trying to plant cocaine or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
And that just escalated, and he pulled Kim in, and that just escalated. Well, if they hadn't have scammed Howard and harassed him, he wouldn't have shown up the night that Lalo also showed up and killed him.
Right.
And Howard's death seemed to be the catalyst for the end of Jimmy.
Yeah.
The end of his relationship with Kim, and him going into full Saul Goodman mode, which takes us into the Breaking Bad stuff.
Yeah.
And then him eventually having to take on the Gene identity and then ending up in prison for the rest of his life. So, maybe Saul would have ended up in prison anyway, but certainly the events as they turned out, and this is what gives both series a connectiveness and a density to that connectiveness, is it was Jimmy's decision to exact revenge on Howard because his brother wasn't around anymore, and Howard represented him not having the chance to be the lawyer he wanted to be in the beginning. And maybe I'm speculating too much at this point, but it seems like it all kind of went to that point to where Lalo killed Howard, and then his life changed, Kim's life changed, and
100%. I don't think that's you're speculating at all. I think you're absolutely spot on. Not again.
I have to say, I was really worried about Kim Wexler's character being killed off. Like, seriously, from the beginning of the series, especially when you could tell that she was another, main character, that you're just like, okay, so here's this woman who's a very important part of Saul's life, Jimmy's wife, and you're just like, I know she's not around in Breaking Bad, so what happens to her? And every single time Lalo Salamanca showed up and she was there and he was being all threatening, you're like, is this the moment? Is this the moment? Like, I seriously thought, okay, yeah, for sure. Howard Hamlin dying was awful and tragic. And I'm not trying to like negate that in any way, but like, if it had been Kim, I would have been a lot more like had more of an emotional response about it. Do you guys feel the same, or what do you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I was sitting on the edge of my couch during that scene.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I kept thinking, okay, this is going to be it for Kim. Yeah. This is the moment. But it was interesting how, I mean, they took Kim in a direction that I don't think anyone suspected. I mean, the Gene stuff in Nebraska and the Cinnabon, that was from the pilot episode.
Yeah, that's true.
Where we were kind of saying, hey, here's Saul after Breaking Bad. Here's what he's doing. But with Kim, we didn't learn until after she left Jimmy that she went down to Florida, and she kind of had her own Gene Turkovic life. I mean, she still like Kim Wexler. She didn't change her identity, but she was still in this kind of job she hated. She was in this relationship and these women she worked with. It was all so counter to the life that she had as a lawyer and with Jimmy and everything, that the life she had in Albuquerque.
updating sprinkler parts on a website. I mean, that's what she does all day. Trying to, and as somebody who has had to write technical, try to like sell technical stuff, but make it salesy, it's so hard because you're like introducing the all new exciting, and it's like, is it really?
Oh my gosh.
But even the conversations she's having with her boyfriend and the women she's worked with, and it's like, hey, should we try Miracle Whip in the? Do you think it'll work in the potato salad? I don't know. It was like it was like she's playing this character that was such a contrast to who she really was, and it was like she was lost in that character.
Yeah. And she was so indecisive because they would ask her questions. Do you want to have a piece of cake? I don't know. Do we want to use Miracle Whip? I don't know. And it isn't until she goes to that law firm where they're offering free legal advice, and she's like, I'd like to help. And she picks phone, and it's like, okay, she's back. Whereas before that, she was living that Jean life.
Yeah. Yeah, when she picks up that phone and answers it, she becomes Kim Wexler again.
Oh yeah, no, it's like she was in like kind of like a purgatory state. That. It was just like that in between like limbo, not really sure what's going to happen kind of state, and it was like depressing to see her in that state. I mean, obviously, like I'm happy that she wasn't dead, but at the same time, you could tell like she was not happy there at all until, and then you see her walk into that legal services office and you're like, because at first I wondered if she was going to go there to like ask for her own help or like hire a lawyer or something. But then when she's like, no, actually, I want to volunteer. You're like, yeah, okay. You're like, this is good, especially because you could tell like she liked doing the pro bono work back in Albuquerque. She liked helping people. She knew that she was a good lawyer and that she had a lot of knowledge and experience. And so she's like, I want to help the people that can't help themselves.
And when she returns to Albuquerque to give the affidavit to the DA and then go see Howard's and then give a copy of it to Howard's widow.
Mm-hmm.
She's at the courthouse. She looks over and she sees a younger woman.
Oh yeah.
Probably legal defense. She has the same Kim Wexler ponytail. She's a brunette. She's not a blonde. But this lawyer is getting her client ready for court by tying a tie on him. And she sees a version of herself, what she used to be.
Well, and isn't it interesting too? Yeah. With I feel like it's happened like in this entire series, but like going back to like it's all in the details. They focus so much on clothing and like how it like identifies a person. And because the obvious with Saul Goodman is that he wears these flashy, bright colored suits, bright colored shirts, and really loud ties. Yeah, very tacky. But then like it's interesting that it was so weird, and it was interesting to see Kim carrying like a patchwork bag instead of like a really nice briefcase, and even just like some of the other clothing she was wearing, like it was just kind of like a simple shirt, simple, nothing very really too flashy. And so like, very drab, just like walking into the Albuquerque courthouse and you're like, this is such a contrast to the more prim and proper, ponytail, blazer, power suit, kind of like very clean cut and everything. And so I like those kinds of details. I pay attention to wardrobe a lot in like TV shows and movies and how they choose to represent the characters or to convey a message of some sort or just symbolism, whatever it is. And so it was really interesting to see that contrast because it truly showed how Kim wasn't herself. She was a different person during that time. And,
and both Kim and Jimmy tried to be the corporate lawyers. Kim with HHM and Jimmy was with the other company.
I don't even remember.
I can't remember.
Anyway, he was with the other law firm. His access in was through the Sandpiper case.
Right.
Oh yes,
The lawsuit, and so they both tried it and they both didn't like it. And so Kim goes from being a corporate lawyer. First, she's at HHM, then she's working for that bank.
Oh
to expand in the Western United States, and then she goes to being legal defense. And then Jimmy goes from working for a big company to himself. He's still trying to be a legitimate lawyer doing the elder care and stuff like that. And then he becomes Saul Goodman after his brother dies, and he's carrying the weight of that around after Charles's Chuck's suicide. And so they try to become the traditional corporate lawyer types first, and then they kind of diverge off, and Jimmy starts wearing the tacky, loud suits and ties, the contrasting colors as Saul Goodman, and Kim, she dresses like a legal defense lawyer, and they don't get paid a lot.
Yeah.
So,
It's true. No, wardrobe is huge.
Can we
go ahead, Tracy?
Spend a minute and just talk about that scene on the bus? Because if Ray Seahorn does not get all the Emmys, especially for that scene, I'm going to lose my mind, because she's on the bus, she's given the deposition, she's met with his widow, and this isn't just an immediate reaction. This is 6 years of repression and not letting herself feel this way. And it all just comes bubbling up. And you see all these different emotions in her eyes and in her face. Mm-hmm. And then she just breaks down crying. And it's just like, bravo. Yes.
Oh my goodness. She was amazing.
It's almost like the person she was in Florida came about because she was keeping back the emotions, the trauma, the regret, the guilt that all comes bursting out in that scene. There's a little Easter egg in that scene. There's a woman on the bus that in an early episode of Breaking Bad, they're having that assembly to honor Walt. Because they've talked about, his illness has been disclosed at that point. So they're honoring Walt. There's a woman who's a fellow teacher that's down on the floor with Walt standing near him. That is Vince Gilligan's wife.
Oh,
real life. That same character, this Albuquerque high school teacher or administrator, is on the bus with Kim. Again, it's Vince Gilligan's wife.
Oh, that's nice.
And she's the one, you see a hand reach out to try and sulk Kim. That's her hand.
Oh.
Wow. Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh, I like that. That's way cool.
So again, they just do an excellent job of, it's like they pay attention to what they create, even if it's years and years and years before. And I can just imagine the writer's room for that show saying, hey, remember in Breaking Bad season 4, episode 5, when this character did this?
You know what we
could fold that same character into this episode of Better Call Saul, because, it's likely they would have still been doing this. It's like the was it Bob Wins or Jim Wins, the real estate guy that Walt lit his car on fire in Breaking Bad.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
But then we're years earlier, and Jimmy and Kim scammed him out of an expensive bottle of alcohol.
Oh yes.
And he's basically the same dude. He's basically this guy that's so full of himself and his success as a real estate guy that he's an easy target for those two.
Yeah. But
well,
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to change topics, so if you had something else, go ahead.
I was as well. I was just going to say real super quick. When they first announced this series, I was a little skeptical because Saul Goodman, while an entertaining character, I just didn't see how they could make a whole show out of him. And the fact that it was Jimmy McGill becoming Saul Goodman and then reclaiming himself, I'm just like, I will watch anything that Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould want to produce or direct or write.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they are very good at world building.
Yes, I love it. Well, and along with that, like, I want to just quickly go beyond Kim and Jimmy for a minute and talk about like Mike Ehrmantraut and like Gus Fring, because again, those were some characters that we knew some things about already from Breaking Bad series, and to see them and like how, you know, even like their stories and how that whole thing set up for what we then saw in Breaking Bad. Like, huge example is they were working together to construct that meth lab underneath the laundromat. Like, that was kind of cool to see, like, the behind the scenes of that, because as far as we knew before all of that, it was, you know, it was just there, but we didn't have like any context about why or how it came to be or whatever. And so it was kind of cool to like see like all of the lengths they had to go to get that underground meth lab up and going, like hiring people from Germany and random people, you know, and just like keeping everything hush hush. And it was the lengths they went to and just all of those like details. And, you know, and we got to know a few other characters too. Like I have to mention Nacho. Like I found that I had like, you know, I was rooting for him a lot of the time. You know, you could tell that he was just trying to do good, and he was also trying to like make his dad proud and also to like help out his dad and keep him safe and out of his, you know, kind of crime world that he was starting to go into. And so it was just like, and again, that was another character that you're like, Nacho is not in Breaking Bad. Yeah. What happens to him? And obviously, like, we know, but I liked that set of the story as well. Like, you had Jimmy over here, and then you had everything with like the drug trade and the crime world over here. And so it was really cool to see it all
slowly doing this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Another little tidbit of Easter egg information is that Nacho is mentioned in passing in Breaking Bad.
Right.
Is he?
That same scene.
Yeah.
Wait, which scene?
When Walt and Jesse kidnap
Saul,
and he says, "Did Lalo send you?" It was Nacho. I didn't do it. It was Nacho.
Yeah.
I need to go back and watch that scene. I've been rewatching Breaking Bad with my husband because I've seen it through a couple times already now, but he kind of saw it through one time, and so a lot of it's new for him. But we're past that part now, so I'm like, dang it, I need to like go back and see if I can find that again. But I'm excited to rewatch Better Call Saul because I've only seen it through the one time, and my husband's never seen it. So once we finish once we finish Breaking Bad, we're gonna watch Better Call Saul together.
Nice.
When I go back and watch Breaking Bad again, when they're in the drug lab underground, all I'm going to think about is, there's Howard and Lalo are down there. Are they standing where Howard and Lalo are?
Yep. And the sad thing is that, you know, once the DEA finds the lab and busts it, they're not necessarily going to be digging up the concrete and looking for something underneath. So those guys are probably just always going to be there.
No, they talk about two. There's a scene where Walt's brother-in-law, Hank is talking to the DEA agent that's kind of investigated the arson, and he does talk about they found two bodies.
Oh, I forgot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to watch Breaking Bad again.
Yeah, so they may have taken that line, and that may have been the genesis for them deciding to have those two characters buried in the concrete.
Oh, interesting.
Oh my gosh.
But they're not necessarily talking about them, are they?
They could be.
Because wait, when does he say that line? At what point?
It's after it's the final season of Breaking Bad. It's before Hank gets killed. But the lab is set on fire.
Right.
Yes.
And when they investigated, they mentioned that 2 bodies were found.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm not quite there in my rewatch yet, so I'm going to totally watch for that.
So listen for that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
The other thing I love
everything
about this series too, and tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but in Breaking Bad, Gus Fring is always in control. He feels like he is the dominant player. He is the king of the block, and nothing ever rattles him or phases him. But in this series, we get to see a different side of Gus. We see him nervous and pacing and deciding which tie he wants to wear and having the safe house. And I just thought that was fun to see a different side of that character. And then to see once he got rid of them, once he got rid of the Salamancas, then he was like, I'm it. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah, that's Gus's story. I mean, it's engaging. It's we're not in fear of him, but it's Gus's ascension to the point he's reached, and when he's introduced to us in Breaking Bad, he's the drug lord of that area, of that region, and when we meet him, he's working for the Salamancas, but he has that hatred of the Salamancas because Hector killed his partner / lover.
Right.
That's right.
Years before.
And he had to serve him because that's all that was available.
Yeah.
He couldn't make a move until he was able to make a move.
So that was his and Mike Ehrmantraut's purpose in this whole kind of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul world building, is we saw their ascension from, what's Mike doing when we meet him in Better Call Saul? He's
parking attendant.
He's a parking attendant.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We learn later that he's a former cop. He's a former dirty cop that's living with the guilt and the sorrow of what happened to his son.
Right.
And that's why he's so intense on taking care of and caring for his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But their role in Better Call Saul is kind of their story that takes them to, here's Fring, who's, basically a captain, I guess, for the Salamanca cartel. Mm-hmm. And here's Mike, who's a parking attendant, and where they go from there to where they're at in Breaking Bad. And it's very good character development. It's very good storytelling.
Oh yeah. And just to see more of them, like even in the first season of Better Call Saul, we got to see Mike. He was helping Jimmy with I can't even remember the names. It's been so long, but I just remember the scene when he's going through the house and he's setting up all the things. And
is it the Kettleman's house?
Yeah, I think so.
I love that character.
Yeah,
those Mr. and Mrs. Kettleman, they're great characters.
Yeah, that whole plot right there. It was just so cool to see more of Mike and see him kind of do his I don't even know what the right term is, but secret agent or black ops kind of person. You got to see more of that with him. Because we kind of saw he is obviously very experienced with law enforcement and just being that kind of authoritative person, but to see him kind of in action, you're just Mike is so cool. Oh my goodness. So it was really fun to see, just to get more of that with those characters.
Also love that flashback of Mike going into Saul's office when Saul is still considering becoming Walter White's lawyer, and Mike's avoid this guy at all costs. He's an amateur.
He didn't listen.
Again, he didn't listen to Mike, and
Mm-hmm.
the rest was history. So,
yeah, there is actually a charity website where they're auctioning off items from Better Call Saul, and it's going to the Albuquerque education fund or something like that.
Aww.
And one of the items, like they have suits that Bob Odenkirk wore, and stuff like that, but they have the little foot massager thing that he buys online, and he's laying on the floor, and Mike's like,
Yes.
turn that off. I'm not
again.
now I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, but again, Gene Turkovic buys one.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's part of his transformation from Gene back to Saul.
Back into Saul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So if you want a massager, then it's available.
I just love how everything just fits so nicely together, and it all comes full circle. Like I think something good to end on would be, I just loved that scene. It was really interesting when he's in the prison bus and he's being transported, and some of the other criminals there recognize him, and because they know who they are, and they start chanting his name.
Mm-hmm.
And then he at first is kind of like, you guys stop, but then you realize he likes it, because you see that such a sly little smirk,
and he can use that in the prison. He can use that notoriety to get things. And
yes,
and I love the fact that they show him working the dough, and it turns out he's not at the Cinnabon, he's making bread in the prison. I'm like,
yeah.
Yes.
From the first time they showed the dough machine at Cinnabon, they were foreshadowing where he was going to end up at the end of the series.
Yeah.
I just love it. Oh my goodness.
Real quick, I love the security guard, Jerry from Parks and Rec. The security guard he always gives the Cinnabon to, and I kept thinking, he must have eaten so many Cinnabons doing all those He's like, best day at work ever.
Oh goodness, yes. Those looked so good. I wanted one. Oh man.
No, it's one of those series that, I mean, both of them, you go back and you watch it again, and there's so much more you can catch the second time, third time around that you don't catch the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And they stuck the landing twice, and that's very impressive.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I love going back and rewatching these shows, and whenever I have some friends that are asking for like TV recommendations, I ask them, have you tried Breaking Bad yet? And some people are like, oh, I started it, and I'm like, watch it, just do it, just get, just power through if you need to, but like, it's such an amazing series. And then with Better Call Saul, like it's its own, yes, there's a lot, obviously we talked about like a lot of, things that interconnect, but on its own, it's an amazing show as well.
It's a totally different show, but it's very similar, which is really cool.
Yeah. I loved how Breaking Bad ended with Walt setting up the automatic gun in the trunk of his car to take out the drug dealers that were holding Jesse.
And gets himself shot in the process.
Very violent ending to the violent world Walt had created for himself.
Yeah.
Saul became part of that violent world, but I'm glad that they didn't go down the same route.
Yes.
Finishing Better Call Saul like they did Breaking Bad, because even though Saul, Jimmy made themselves part of this violent world that Walter White becomes part of later, at the same time, this show was about relationships. This was about first Jimmy and Chuck, and then Jimmy and Kim.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that Jimmy's redemption had to do with him keeping Kim from going to prison and or being part of a civil lawsuit that would have destroyed her financially.
Yeah.
And we got that final flashback scene where they brought back Chuck.
That was
yes.
I did not expect
and
Michael McKean.
Michael McKean, who was one of my all-time favorite actors. But that scene was the day before the pilot episode of Better Call Saul.
That's awesome.
But it was also a reminder that Jimmy was someone who cared about others.
Deeply.
Walter White didn't care. Walter White only cared about himself.
Right.
He said that he was, in the beginning, he said he was
for my family.
making this meth to raise money so his family would be able to survive.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to make $730,000 to leave behind for his family, which, by the way, was the guy with cancer that Jimmy broke into his house, that Saul broke into his house.
Yeah.
When he was looking at the guy's financials in one account, the guy had $730,000.
Oh my gosh!
Oh,
another callback to Breaking Bad.
Okay, that's cool. That's a very deep.
So
cut.
many.
I did not know that one.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But Walt not only made that money, he easily surpassed it.
Yeah.
And so that showed that his efforts were all about himself. Jimmy's efforts were all about other people. And that's how the show ended, was Jimmy sacrificing himself for other people. I mean, yeah, Walt did sacrifice himself to save Jesse, but Jimmy sacrificed himself after he couldn't save his brother. He sacrificed himself to save Kim.
For sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm glad they didn't just like somehow kill Jimmy off in the end. Like his ending happened the way it needed to.
Yeah.
I think we all knew it was going to end up with him in prison. Obviously we didn't know the in-between stuff.
Right.
But I'm glad that they did what they needed to for each ending of each show and for those characters. It was very fitting.
Absolutely.
Oh man, well, so many good things. So many good things about these shows.
Keep going for hours.
I know there's just so many little details, and I know we didn't touch on as many as as much as we could, but we do have to end at some point. So I guess just any last thoughts, you guys, before we end the show officially?
Tracy?
Like I said, I think it's remarkable that we were all worried about, can they make the landing work, the finale work for Breaking Bad? And they did. And I knew a few people who were worried about Better Call Saul, and I'm like, you know what? They've already proven to me that they can do this. So I wasn't worried that they were going to do it. But I was so just satisfied with the way that it all went down. I'm with you, Marlee. It ended the way it needed to end. It was a beautiful, poetic. There were so many callbacks to the beginning, the sharing of the cigarette, and then at the end when they do where Saul does the finger guns, and they cut to the wide shot, and she's on one side of one barbed wire fence. Then there's a big empty space between them, and then he's behind the barbed wire fence on the other side, just showing the distance between them. They're never going to breach, but they still have that love and respect, and that just beautiful, beautiful filmmaking, writing, everything was great.
Yeah, I would say anyone who's an aspiring filmmaker, writer, screenwriter, director, if you aspire to be the showrunner of a TV series you create someday, watch both shows. Pay close attention. Both these shows are a masterclass on how to tell a story cinematically correctly.
Yes.
And pay attention to what you're creating. We've talked about the details that these guys paid attention to. That final scene with Jimmy and Kim together, smoking in the conference room or the interview room, where Kim's kind of used her Albuquerque or New Mexico bar card to get in because it never expires. Um, and they're leaning back against the wall, smoking, sharing that cigarette. Again, that happened in the pilot episode. The music that's being played was the same music they played in the pilot episode. So, watch these shows. Watch how they're executed, how each scene is executed, how the characters are developed. Watch how they use flash forwards and flashbacks effectively.
Oh yeah.
Those all moved the character stories forward, even the flashbacks. That's not easy to do as writing. Usually people use flashbacks as a way to give exposition,
Lost,
or details, and often it slows the story down. It doesn't keep it moving forward. Watch how these people do it. It's remarkable.
Yeah,
I love it. Very well said, for sure. No, I like I said before, like these are two shows that I will always recommend to people needing a good TV show to dive into. And like, because seriously, like after the very first time I watched there's too many bees, Breaking Bad, the first time I like sat there just kind of in awe with how like it was a TV masterpiece to me.
Yeah.
And I think it holds up because again, like, cause I've rewatched it by myself once and then now I'm rewatching it again with my husband and I'm just like, the show is just so good. And every time, like, I'm like, I'm pumped, you still get that, like, yes, this is great, feeling. And then to have like the universe expanded into Better Call Saul and then of course, like, there's, El Camino as well. I don't want to totally forget about that one too, because it's a nice supplement, I feel like, to the rest of the story. But it's just all of it together. Like there's so much more they could do with this. And who knows? They might make more, they might not. I don't think they need to, but I think if they did,
they're done.
Okay. And I'm totally fine with that. Like, I feel like what they have is great. Like there's we're good. It's satisfying.
There's talk that Vince Gilligan is going to, his next show is kind of a Twilight Zone X-Files type show. And he got his start on the X-Files. So he's like, I want to do something different. He's like, I feel like I've got this kind of mastered, like this world mastered. I want to challenge myself in another one and see if I can do it there too.
Excellent. I love that. Whatever it is, I'm so excited to get into it because these guys, they know what to do.
The X-Files is the reason why Bryan Cranston got the part of Walter White, because the network didn't want him. Why? Because he was Hal from Malcolm in the Middle.
Right.
Oh,
but Vince Gilligan had been involved with an X-Files episode that Bryan Cranston played a darker character in it, and he came, he told the network, this guy can do it. I've seen him play a darker character. He's just not this goofy comedy guy. He's a very good dramatic actor, and he proved him right. I think that it's great what they've given us. We have 65 episodes between Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. We have a movie, and that's a lot of content to go back and revisit. In fact, I was thinking the other day, I'd like to go back, start with Better Call Saul season 1, go up until the episode 9 of the final season, and then watch Breaking Bad, and then watch El Camino, and then watch those final 4 episodes of Better Call Saul. So it won't be completely in chronological order, because the whole series of Better Call Saul, they
go back and forth
forward to Gene in Nebraska, but I think that'll be a fun way to watch it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Yes. Well, you guys, this has been so much fun talking about these shows, these characters that we love. I really appreciate you guys coming on Age of Geek podcast and sharing this with me. And I'm definitely going to put some spoiler warnings on our show notes when we release this. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but I feel like if you're coming into a episode where you're talking about a finale, you should expect spoilers.
Right.
But yes. Oh no, we lost Tracy again.
Tracy, I guess Tracy got his final word in.
Yes, he's like, yeah, I'm done. Thanks, guys.
The internet
Bye.
gods have so decreed it.
Oh goodness. Well, I'll just kind of hopefully he'll pop back in, but I'll just do our little final blurb here. So again, you can find Age of Geek podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We also have the video versions on YouTube, and we're also on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of those. And again, I'm Marlee. I'm also on the Cutscenes and Cupcakes podcast, which is under the Age of Geek Media umbrella. And you can find Blake.
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and hanging out at the library near my house.
Excellent. I love it. Tracy just messaged me and he's like, I lost internet. Grr. So I guess we'll just go ahead and close without him. So again, thanks, Blake. Thanks, Tracy, for being here. And I'm going to do the little outro starting now. Thanks. Bye.